world-class aquifer enabled ancient African kingdom to thrive in the Sahara for hundreds of years. The rise and fall of the Garamantes in what is now Libya is a cautionary tale for regions that rely on ancient groundwater. A unique method of obtaining underground water enabled the Garamantes to thrive in the Sahara for more than 2,000 years ago, long after the region became a desert, but their demise is a cautionary tale for modern regions like California that rely heavily on ancient groundwater for their modern supply. Frank Schwartz, the hydrologist at Ohio State University, said they were lucky to have this world-class aquifer, but it was a non-sustainable system and it eventually ran out. Schwartz, who studies the hydrology of ancient civilizations, described the rise and fall of the Garamantes on October 16 at the Geological Society of America's annual conference in Pittsburgh. Historians once thought that the Garamantian kingdom was a minor power in the Fezzan region of North Africa, now in southwestern Libya, until it was subdued by the expanding Roman Empire in the 1st century. But since the 1960s, archaeology has revealed that the kingdom was larger and more powerful than previously thought, with several cities fed by water transported by gravity in underground tunnels, or fogaras, from an ancient aquifer in the sandstone rocks of the nearby highlands, a major feat of ancient engineering. This was the first society that grew up in Africa without a river, Schwartz said. In Egypt, they had the Nile flooding every year, but here there was no river, nothing. Schwartz said the Garamantes described from Neolithic cattle herders. They descended from Neolithic cattle herders who lived in the region between 7,000 and 5,000 years ago during the last Green Sahara phase, a relatively wet phase of the Sahara climate that occurs roughly every 23,000 years and is caused by changes in Earth's rotational axis. But the climate change and the Sahara became hyper-arid by the time the Garamantian kingdom arose in about 400 BC, he said. Archaeologists think the Garamantes extracted groundwater with different technologies at different times, including Shadouf wells, in which water is lifted in a bucket using a counterbalance level, and Dal wells, in which water is lifted in a leather bag by harnessed animals. But the greatest innovation was the fogaras, which carried water to the Garamantian cities. Schwartz said the technology had originated in Persia, where the tunnels were known as qanats, and was probably transmitted to the Garamantes by traders on desert caravans. In other words, the know-how how to build a system like this. But most Persian qanats drained aquifers that were replenished each year from melting snow, something not seen in the Fezzan. Instead, the Garamantian fogaras tapped an ancient subterranean aquifer that had formed in the nearby sandstone highlands tens of millions of years earlier and had been topped up during the Green Sahara phases. Schwartz noted that it was only a matter of good luck, serendipity, that the Garamantes lived there near the aquifer and that the fogaras functioned at all. He said this should not have worked here, but luckily it did, and the water from the fogaras enabled the Garamantes to establish a powerful kingdom in the middle of the desert. Digging for water. Archaeologists have now identified more than 460 miles of fogaras in the Fezzan region, and they were probably dug by people enslaved by the Garamantians, Schwartz said. Some of the longest fogaras are more than 4 miles long and cut through sand, gravel, and solid sandstone. Vertical access shafts descend into the ground tunnels roughly every 16 to 33 feet, 5 to 10 meters. Andrew Wilson, a professor of archaeology of the Roman Empire at the University of Oxford, who was not involved in the presentation, said one of the oldest fogaras has been dated from organic matter in its mud brick shaft lining to between 391 BC and 206 BC, but many were much younger. Wilson told Life Science in an email that it was not clear how much water the fogaras extracted from the ancient aquifers, and to what extent the aquifer was replenished by the region's occasional rains. But there were signs of stress that reflected a falling water table, such as a deepening and extending of the Fogaras, he said. But such measures could not compensate for the aquifer's overuse. Ultimately, the Fogaras failed after several centuries. The water level of the aquifer eventually fell below the levels that could be fed into the Fogaras, leading to a decline in the Garamantian kingdom after about 100 AD, Schwartz said. But the region's underground water is still being exploited by Libya's Great Man-Made River Project, which began in the 1980s and now supplies water to farmland and millions of people in the north of the country, he said. The demise of the Garamantes illustrates the dangers of exploiting ancient supplies of groundwater, as is now being done in California and much of Iran, Schwartz noted. The Garamantes had serendipity for a while, but it was not sustainable, he said. This is by Tom Metcalf on Live Science. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.